Welcome to Sports Trebuchet. I'm Marty.
I'm Kyle.
And I'm Josh.
God, that pause was not intentional. I totally blanked once it started. Happy birthday, guys.
Aww.
Thank you.
How adorable.
1 year old. We were 1 year old.
Call me when you're this many.
Guys, listeners, this is our 1 year anniversary. When are we recording this? This is the 26th, and I think the 27th of September last year was our first episode. Do you guys actually scratch that? This episode is basically us reminiscing about the year that was.
It was exactly 1 year today, by the way.
Was it today for sure?
Wednesday the 26th, bro. We used to do Wednesdays, remember? We started.
That's right. Yeah, we're on Thursdays now. That's a good point.
Yep.
Look at us.
So we're going to talk about the last year, which is a whole lot of fun. But before we do that, do you guys remember how bad our first episode was?
Yes.
I haven't listened to it since, but I did see that we talked about Barry Sanders, and I believe that most of the podcast was actually just watching highlights of him. And as this is an audio medium, it probably didn't translate incredibly well.
Yeah, it was me just listing off stats as you watched a video of a guy you never really seen before. And to add some backstory, when we first kind of thought of doing this show, I think originally we're kind of like, okay, cool, we'll shoot the shit, we'll talk about what we want to talk about. It might be football, it might be soccer, it might be wrestling. And then I remember very specifically Josh being like, well, we might need to be more focused because there's a million podcasts that are like that, right?
Yeah.
And so we thought, cool, let's do, because I always felt like I learned something from Josh about soccer. I feel like we were always trying to teach him about historical aspects of the NFL and maybe college football here and there too. And I was like, cool, we can do maybe a sports history podcast kind of that just addresses different players or teams or sports lore, I guess. And that was really a cool idea, I think. And that's also what leaned us into that Trebuchet name, too, other than the memes.
Entirely fair.
So when we did that episode, I remember walking away from it being like, yeah, it's going to get better. And anybody that's never done a podcast, it's amazing how hard it is, even when we were all in the same room, to get the beats right. Even though we talked to each other for almost, over a year for all three of us. But I've known Kyle for 13 years, and I've known Josh for a little over a year at that point.
It was just weird kind of trying to put on a show. It's exactly what it was. It was trying to put on a show and make it sound natural. And sit there and still have normal conversations like we usually have.
It's the talking over people too, right? Like, we talk over each other all the time whenever we're talking, but talking over each other in a podcast makes it feel like a piece of shit. So you had to really get conscious of dialing back. And I know that was something for all of us, because I still see it now where someone takes a breath because they know they want to interrupt, but they can't.
Well, I think that it goes to kind of our style of communicating anyways, where if we're riffing off an idea or riffing off a bit or a joke or whatever, in real life, kind of overlapping over each other works. But especially because most of the time we do these shows, we're in the same room. It's one microphone. You can't really modify the input. You can't put any tracks in check, and it just ends up sounding kind of like a mess. Us just talking over each other, like you said.
It was really hard when we had, when we experimented with 4 people.
Oh,
when we had
100%.
NASA.
Yeah. NASA was, for everything he did bring to the show, including an insane amount of enthusiasm. He was all about jumping in there in the middle of what you're saying. And not like I'm not guilty or we haven't been guilty, but I think in the last 5 to 10 issues we've done, that hasn't been nearly the issue that it was the first 10.
No, and maybe one of the bigger catalysts of that was when we had Bobby come on, and we basically just said, let's let him run, where we were just kind of listening and letting it happen instead of talking over him and being just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, kind of giving him enough rope is kind of what we joked about, but it ended up, I think, teaching us all how to slowly or to calculate what we were going to say when we were going to say it.
I don't think about much.
He doesn't. I can attest to that.
I just allow it to happen. I'm not thinking about what I'm saying half the time.
Well, that's probably a pretty good segue. So, did you guys pick particular issues that were your favorites or particular moments? Because I kind of have a mix of a few of them.
So okay. I went through the podcast notes on each of them and just picked moments. I didn't really pick episodes all the way through.
Okay,
so I just
I did the same.
Particular bits.
Kyle, similar situation? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Okay, so let's start with Bobby then, while we're at it. Josh, do you want to talk about the precipice of the Bobby relationship?
Yeah, I can do. When I looked over that cliff and saw that the Earth had an edge. So I was at work, chilling, getting ready to go home, and I don't even know where the conversation. Oh, I do know where the conversation went. So we were talking about the weather, as all dull people do, and we were talking about the fact that the sun was out. And it was super late. And Bobby turns around to me and he goes, it's not the same sun as 20 years ago, right? Well, the person next to me is like totally baffled. And I'm looking at her and she's looking at me and I'm like, did I just hear that entirely correct? She's like, yep. He said the sun isn't the same sun. So I pressed him on the issue, asked him a little bit more. And he was like, yeah, man. I have these blueprints right here to show you that this is a fake sun. Have you never noticed how less yellow it is? Well, needless to say, after that conversation, I did an incredibly good job of keeping a straight face, by the way, because at this point, it really was my job if I'd have absolutely ripped piss out of him. So I decided that the next day I needed to get with you guys and make this a thing. We needed to make this a conversation that went on longer than 13 minutes. So we talked to him, we finangled it. It took about 8 million years to be able to get him on the show because staying at his desk was not something he was an expert at or is still an expert at. But we got him on, and the rest, as they say, is history. But I do want to say the absolute perfect moment, and I would not trade those 4 hours that I wasted for nothing. Just seeing Kyle's face at the end of the first issue, when he leant back in his chair and looked at me like he was ready to just end it all. And that really made me know I made the right decision.
Yeah, I remember distinctly on the first issue that we recorded with him, he had to leave for about 5 minutes to check something because we all work together. We work in the same building, and he was on a parallel team to ours, or at least to Josh and I's. Kyle made the big bucks at the time, so he was making more money.
Ridiculous.
And when he left, and we hit stop, looking at Kyle, and it did look like he had just gotten done with a round with Floyd Mayweather, and his eyes were floating, and he couldn't really look at me in the eye. He couldn't look anyone in the eye. He just looked completely shook.
It was a lot.
It wasn't even so much Mayweather. It was just like he'd been walked down by a boxer. Just walked down every time he tried to get away. He just walked him down, just kept punching, jabbing. Suns aren't real. 5G's going to kill you. Your mum isn't really your mum. Your dad ain't really your dad. They're holograms. The Earth's flat. The Earth's not flat. There's multiple Earths. They're round. Now they're flat. Now they're spheres. Now they're eggs. It was just non-stop.
I'm not sure the Earth is flat. Actually, in 10 minutes, I'm going to tell you that I do think it is because I've talked myself into it.
There's people that live underneath the surface, but the Earth is not round.
Because the surface is another dimension, and you just need to get woke, brother.
And the only way to get to it is in Switzerland.
Or the North Pole.
Yeah, through the CERN thing. So, what of the 2 Bobby episodes, I have one moment that's my favorite, and it's when he confused marine law with maritime law, and then just kept saying marine law over and over and over again.
Oh, that was wonderful.
That really is a good one.
and none of us had the. I don't think I even noticed it at the time, and I remember listening back with my wife and her going like, "It's definitely not marine law," and I thought like, "That's not." It sounded weird.
Well, I mean, okay. First of all, I think the second episode of Bobby was the better of the 2 because it was less like theoretical shit.
Also, less hitting on the desk, which at Jay Cranfill was quick to point out was the problem with the first episode. Of
all the things that we experienced in that hour and a half in the issue.
Yeah, it wasn't him defending his points on those theories. It was that he was defending it by hitting on the desk harder, and that was his justification for being right.
But yeah, that second one, I mean, there was some really fun like banter moments in that one too. And it was also kind of fun with Brittany coming in and sitting in with us on that one. It was just, that one was a really fun one to me. Just the banter that happened. Yeah, Marty saying that he could spend some time in Antarctica.
Yeah, us trying to our hypothetical Patreon to send me to Antarctica for a week.
Yeah. I think my favorite moment really was of those 2 episodes was really just right near the beginning. And I'd spoken to you 2 a lot about what I'd experienced in those 13 minutes of my day at the end of a Thursday afternoon. But just seeing it come to life in front of my eyes and making you a part of that moment with me just really made everything come together. I was like, see, I knew I wasn't making this up. I knew I hadn't just gone on some wild trip at 5:30. This was real. These are real thoughts from a real person. Now you get to bathe in them with me. And that just made it all okay.
And a wonderfully nice human being, too.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting point.
Super nice dude.
If he wasn't as nice, and also if he didn't have such a smooth tone when he talked, there's no way we would have had him on a second time.
Yeah. Who's to say we aren't having him on a third?
Well, I mean, we can still have him on for a third. He's got more. We know that by how much he knew in the first 2.
I'm not against it.
No. We'll definitely have him back at some point. One of the... Go ahead, Kyle.
This might be what you're getting to, but as far as one of my favorite moments, it was the fact that we were so heavily toting the AAF for about 3 weeks.
It was all hands on deck.
Marty still has his Orlando Apollo's championship ring that he got from Steve Spurrier.
Yeah, there's a banner hanging across my office right now that just says undefeated, the Orlando Apollo's 2019 champions.
The reigning, defending, undisputed.
I think the thing with the AAF, for us, I think now, in hindsight, so Josh runs a successful podcast, right? And it's niche in the way that it's his team, right? Like it's Brighton Hove specifically, and it's a great show, but there's obviously an audience for it. And we didn't necessarily, in the what we alluded to earlier, were us trying to figure things out. We were all pretty excited about another football league, I think. Like, obviously.
Oh, then the whistle blew.
Yeah. Then they had to play the games on the field. And I think that it was interesting that we got lucky enough that both Kyle and I drew very fun teams, and that Josh drew just an absolute dog shit team in the Memphis Express. They were awful. Gosh. And then we even included Nasta, who I'm pretty sure never remembered the name of his team to begin with.
Who was his team?
He was the Arizona Hot Shots.
Oh, he was the Hot Shots. I think the Atlanta one was the one he hated, right?
Yeah, the Atlanta one was his enemy, which worked perfectly with him being basically an adopted son of Charlotte.
Oh my God. Well, I don't think I've ever shared how just beaten down I was that first weekend of watching the AAF. Just like, it started out okay because the Commanders were the first game, and it was kind of a fun offensive game for them. But then I had to watch Memphis against what I think it was Birmingham that first
Birmingham,
week.
Yeah.
And I just sat there and I was like, oh my God, it must be like what I would have felt like if I sat down and watched that Denver and Chicago game from a couple weeks ago.
God, true fact.
It was awful. It was there was I think, did they go 6 weeks? I think they went 6 weeks. So multiply that. That's 30 games they played. There might have been 4 good games out of those 30.
Yeah.
And Orlando played in 4 of them. So I was lucky. Even though I knew I was watching a clearly better team destroy other teams, I was still kind of having fun watching it. But I think, and Josh especially was harsh on it, but the promise of what the app was going to involve in terms of the watching experience, that shit the bed, and the league just followed suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did shit the bed. They appealed to they made it seem like it was going to be the European betting market type appeal, and they had none of that. They couldn't get any gambling on it. And then they also obviously said that this app was going to be tremendous in terms of live kind of drama to add to it. And I don't think it even worked for 2 weeks, did it? I'm pretty sure it was like week 2 or week 3 it came on, and then it was just like worse graphics than Football Manager.
Yeah, they didn't have it until at earliest week 2, but it was also on delay. So no matter if, like, I was watching it using PlayStation View or like the Bleacher Report app. So I have the built-in internet delay of like 15 or 16 seconds, and I was still like 10 seconds ahead of the app. It was dog shit.
Well, no, you're totally right.
Well, and it was also the thing that, like, yeah, they thought you were going to be able to do prop bets. Not a thing. But then they didn't even update the app. Like, there was like a week where the week was over and they hadn't updated scores. Like,
yeah,
there was nowhere for stats on there. It was just a thing to watch tackling dummies fall around on a field. That's basically what it was.
Yeah, the only way you could get stats is to go follow some dipshit on Twitter who used like a scraper written in Python to go through the play log data and tell you who got which. And so even then it wasn't that accurate, because if there was like a turnover, it did not record it correctly. And so it's like if someone ran for 20 yards and picked up the fumble from the other team, they got 20 yards. It was awful. From the get-go. And honestly, I think it was, in hindsight, it was obviously an attempt to gain an audience for the podcast too. And it still remains, I think, the most downloaded episode, like with a bullet.
Which is wild.
It was a lot of downloads. Like it was impressive. And then I think what hurt us anyways was the fact that we didn't record but every other week, which is great for us, but probably bad for a week-by-week league. And then the league just being dog shit.
And falling apart before its first season ended.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't even halfway through, were it? Didn't
it was just halfway.
Like week 6?
It was 6 out of 10.
Christ.
Less than half if you count the playoffs. which would have been, I think, 13 weeks.
Oh, dang, yeah, significantly less.
It just reinforced that, especially after coming off of, NFL playoffs and then going to really kind of second-rate football.
Oh, man, and I remember how people were pumped because that Super Bowl was so boring, and it was like 13-10 or whatever the score was, 13-7.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, oh, man, this high-flying AAF is going to really take a chunk out of the NFL share.
We don't kick the ball.
Yeah, it's going to be badass. And then, like, Zach Mettenberger trots out there and can't tie his shoelaces. can't read a magazine, and he's just standing out there getting hammered behind the line or just throwing just wild ass passes. Just so unable.
You got Trent Richardson out there who couldn't stay in the league even though he was a top 5 pick, and
averaging 2 yards a carry.
Cow. Yeah, and he's like the best running back in the league at that point.
Yeah. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, didn't he get 3 touchdowns in that first game? I'm pretty sure he did.
Yeah, he had 3 touchdowns and 22 rushing yards or something like that. It was because the team was just bad, and everybody thought that God, what was the quarterback for the Birmingham Iron?
Lewis.
Oh, I keep wanting to say Black, but
he went to the Eagles.
Luis Ruiz.
No, it was a Hispanic name. It was, I want to say Suarez, but I know that's not right.
Cut back. His name was. Wow, even the wiki doesn't even have like the old roster.
It was Perez.
Luis Perez. Yep.
It was Perez.
Who it's earned him a role in the NFL, so good for him, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine.
Josh, give us a moment. What's another thing that popped you during our year of existence?
I have a couple, but we'll start with your Colin Kaepernick delusion. How you feel currently with Lamar Jackson and his run in the league right now, and whether you still want to believe that Kaepernick could do a better job than Lamar Jackson, pound for pound right now. No,
yeah, I was looking, same thing with the notes, because I think it was like our 3rd episode or something, wasn't it? It was, you know what? No, it was issue number 6. And at the time, what I was saying... You were beating my ass down about Blake Bortles. Yeah. I mean, that was easy to do because he was very poor. Yeah. And then I did that it was December 6th, 2018, and... Not to say that I was like 100% committed to it, but I definitely meant almost all those picks at the time of like who I'd take at the moment. But I think it probably took 2 more weeks, and I would have changed half of those because those quarterbacks turned it around or they did something else. And then since then, I know it's just kind of been a bit, so I just kind of kept the bit up because the Kaepernick question is such a triggering question for so many people out of the blue. I think I even asked Bobby about it on one of the podcasts.
To be fair, I did say when we went through every quarterback that I had a hard time picking between Bortles and Dak Prescott at the time, and joke's on me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder. I'd like to listen back. If anyone feels like, feel free to do it. Issue number 6. If I said Trubisky over Cap or not, because
you did.
Did I really?
Yeah.
Well, see, it's an ever fluid concept. The Kaepernick standard.
It's a subjective art form.
It is a subjective art form.
God.
The episode after that, issue number 7, I actually had 2 things that I wanted to bring up from there. One was maybe one of my favorite stories that Josh has told in the podcast, and it was the Ali Dia story, which was fantastic. And then it was with Nasta in the room, we were doing like the worst or funniest gimmicks, like the names in sports right now. and I threw the name out of Tuna Altoona, to which Nasta just pronounced, oh yeah, the Alabama quarterback, whose name is actually Tua Tagovailoa. And it's probably the hardest I've laughed over any podcast we've done so far. It was absolutely, it was the perfect comedic timing that was totally, if Nasta wasn't there, it wouldn't happen.
Well, if you want to go for Nasta, I have one for hitting Nasta too. So Nasta's Tom Brady tirade as well also is in the Hall of Fame. Didn't he call him a beanie-in idiot or something? The Boston beanie-in idiot.
It was weird because he had like this, like he hated Tom Brady and he hated Boston, but wasn't he like, he was still a fan of like the
No, he hates the Patriots and he hates everything Boston, but he had like a love affair with Brady.
Okay, yeah. That's what it was. Yeah, so he loved Brady, but hated everything else Boston. Yeah, that was baffling. It was hard to wrap our head around.
It was really hard for me to wrap my head around, considering we're from the same area in the Northeast, and we both are diehard Yankees fans, so it's, hate everything Boston. And I'll give Brady respect because he is probably the greatest quarterback to ever play the game, but man, I don't like him.
Yeah, it doesn't, just because you respect a guy doesn't mean you have to like a guy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But he had the utmost respect for Tom Brady, which is just super weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, pure respect.
Kyle, what was the moment out of all these issues where you were beaten down the most with Josh and I? Do you have a particular moment? Because I know we probably hit it at some point. Was it me asking you to tell the poop story? You were refusing.
You didn't even ask me. I was motioning off camera. I'm not. Telling
yeah. Oh yeah. It was that Jonah Hill. It was the Jonah Hill gif of you just doing like the cut the neck physical motion to tell me to stop. And I was like, no, you have some. You don't have some. You do.
It's never coming out. You guys know it. I'm never telling it.
Yeah, we know it secretly. You know what? If anybody wants to donate, to the show, Kyle will record it and send it to you.
I will not.
$10.
Let's start a Patreon, and our highest donators get Kyle's story.
Third tier on the Patreon gets the Kyle shitting himself story.
I'll tell you what beat me down was the fact that somehow you and our fake producer Kyle decided to somehow work me into a bet where I had to talk about how wonderful you guys were.
Yeah,
that's a good one too.
Yeah, it was the most awkward thing about it was how hard it was for you to find something endearing to say for about both of us. It really kind of hurt my feelings.
Well, that's what happens.
He doesn't sound overly upset by it.
Honestly, the funniest part was that Kyle in Texas and you have never met in person, and the only real experience or interaction you guys have had, because before then we didn't have our group chat, I don't think, was just playing Call of Duty together, right? Like it was solely that, maybe FIFA once or twice.
Yeah, that's all the interaction I've ever had is group chat and Call of Duty.
You know what, Kyle? One of my favorite things, and it reminded me almost immediately, speaking of producer Kyle, so our second issue, we recorded the first one. It kind of sucked, right? And the second one, Josh had something to do. So I was like, cool, we're starting off great. Second issue, Josh can't make it. So me and Kyle are going to do this thing solo. Or I guess duet versus trio.
The Hot Man thing?
The Hot Man thing, which was fun, but also, again, visual medium. And I didn't know some of those people. So I can't imagine how many... If we had 100 listeners... and they were all looking up pictures on their phone as they're listening, it makes for a very dangerous driving situation. But
Kyle knows all about that too after watching me leave today.
Jesus. I swear, he almost hit me.
I didn't even almost hit you. Give over.
I think my favorite part about that issue was that I keep teasing that we're going to do a specific episode and we're going to talk about fixing American soccer and combining like the Mexican League with the United States League and all that other stuff, because it's a really cool conversation and we just haven't done it yet. And I still want to do that topic because I think Josh has very valuable input, obviously, in it. But I loved that we ended up leaving the show like that. And then it also was the worst because as we were going through the different teams, because it was like the USL had just announced like a tiered structure system. And we were talking about Liga Mexico, and I stumbled upon the club Aguas de Calientes, or translated to Hot Water City. And I still want to change the podcast name to Hot Water City. Like after it's been a full year almost. It's been 54 weeks, and Hot Water City, I swear to God, I think Hot Water City once every other, maybe at least twice a month, I think of like, man, Hot Water City. What can I brand as Hot Water City? Because I just fucking love it. I don't know why, it just sticks.
I wish that we could express in sheer volume to the listeners how often Marty wants to change the name of the podcast.
I don't think it's possible to.
I think I've only suggested it like 4 times. Like 4 big times.
A week.
No.
It's like once a month.
Just about every time a cool phrase comes around, you're like, let's do it. Let's make the podcast this.
Well, I mean, it would only make sense since we named ourselves after a fucking meme anyways. So what else? Let's just follow suit with the meme culture, which is... in 5 years, we're going to be the equivalent of like the weird like baby that's drunk looking up meme from 8 years ago with the name. And I'm just like, let's just switch it up. Let's just.
At some point, we're not even going to have a name. It's just going to be a picture of a meme.
What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start 5 different shows, and I'm going to use the same recording. And the only thing I'm going to do differently is at the very beginning, I'm going to dub over my voice with whatever the new podcast name is, and we're just going to hit everybody at the same time.
Welcome to Friday Night Chaos.
Friday Night Chaos, Hot Water City. Do you remember any of the other suggestions I had made? Now that you bring it up,
Marty, they're 8 times a week, mate. Every lunch,
it's not.
Someone says a fun phrase, and you're like, "Let's call the podcast that." Like, oh, I've got bacon for dinner. Let's call that podcast "Bacon for Dinner."
I'm not. I would. First of all, that's simpleton bullshit that I wouldn't be up for.
It's exactly what you're about.
Bacon for dinner.
I'm surprised you don't want to turn it to "What About Eggs."
You know what? What About Eggs would be a decent podcast name. I think. I think.
See?
If I had to
That's
choose
the exact phrase.
If I had to choose any of the bits, it would be to change the show name to Broken Ankles Doofus Yeet.
Entirely fair.
That's a great one.
Did we ever tell that story? I think we did, actually.
No, we didn't tell the story, and the only thing that we even made reference to was one of the early issues randomly, as we're saying bye, Kyle yells it in the microphone before I hit stop. So out there somewhere is just a random issue where Kyle yells, "Broken Ankles Doofus Yeet."
I think this is a perfect time for you guys to tell the story.
Josh, go ahead. It's your story.
So, yeah, it was only me. That's the craziest part. So I hopped on Rocket League, one of the greatest games of all time. And I went on a bit of solo standard, and I played with a lad, and I'm pretty sure he was called Joker. Am I right? Does that ring
you said, right? Yeah, you said it. You said it definitely referenced. It was definitely a Joker reference. I don't know if it was just Joker, maybe like XX Joker.
Yeah, it was something like that. Anyway, but this lad, he was fucking wheels off playing around, and he scored. And the first thing he does was type in all caps, "Broken Ankles Doofus," nonstop. Right. So then, what happens next is that. We concede 2 goals, I think, and he proceeds to then also shout "Broken Ankles Doofus Yeet" to everybody else. So I figured that he wasn't just doing a bit for his own goals; he was just enjoying the phrase "Broken Ankles Doofus Yeet." So really, just any opportunity to yeet a ball into the back of the net was enough for him to spray the message out to everybody watching the game. And just the way he loved life and the way he tacked onto that as much as he did. Is pretty much an inspiration that everybody can get a hold of, right? No matter what.
And it's kind of
that excited.
Don't be afraid.
It's kind of the perfect phrase too, because it's gender neutral, right? Broken ankles doofus. It applies to any team, whether you give it up or whether you score. Like either way, broken ankles doofus just it resonates to this day.
Yes, it resonates.
Resonates. I'm bad at pronouncing things. We know this.
So I do have another one for you.
Yeah.
Because I know we're cracking on. An enjoyable cultural exchange on truck nuts.
I had that in my notes too. Did you listen back to it?
A real thing. I didn't listen back to it. I haven't listened back to any of them prepping for this. I just read all the notes and picked out some moments that I thought were ridiculous, and truck nuts was definitely one of them.
We ended up.
What about my crowning achievement of the geography quiz?
The geography quiz is definitely on there. Upset a lot of people. It was more controversial than I think anybody could ever have imagined. A simple quiz on geographical.
I think the controversy stemmed from what ended up being. It was 25 or 30 minutes. Like it was a significant chunk of the episode. Because I think, and I think it would have probably made our list anyways, but at Jay Cranfield, who's been honestly the most dedicated listener to us, which I sincerely appreciate.
Yes,
he's incredibly loyal.
But because he's also sarcastic, it's always just criticisms most of the time, which is also great. But he said nothing like a 25-minute geography quiz, as he's also hearing, because at that point I wasn't editing the show or anything, so there's probably a lot of silent noise in there, and he's just hearing Nasta and I's ears smoking, trying to think of fucking answers that we can't get. Kyle's nailing a lot of the questions, but he didn't do great either. It was a failure.
Fine.
It was Well, how many questions was it, Josh? Do you remember?
It's like 20, wasn't
20, I think. Yeah.
And Kyle, you got like 13, I think.
14, I think. It's a C. That's a C.
Well, I tell you what, Jay, if you're listening, which I'm sure you are, if you can pop back and have a listen for us and let us know what Kyle got, we'd love that.
Do you have a 30-minute commute? If you do, get through something.
And actually, you know what? At Jay Cranfield, I challenge you to a quiz.
Oh, we can. If Jay is willing, I would love to have him on the show for a quiz. And Josh, who should run? I guess we don't know what we need to set. We need to set the rules. Figure out who's going to run the quiz, what kind of quiz it's going to be, and I think he could do well.
Well, we'd have to co-host it. We'd just have to ask alternate questions.
Oh, so is he going to be the only person answering then? We're just going to...
No, me and you, and then we would have questions, like 7 each, say, and then they would all get, and then we would ask one each. So we would just ask Kyle and Jay the same questions and get the answers, and nail it that way.
Okay, I like that. I like that idea.
The gauntlet is thrown. Come at my title, bro.
The nickname tournament we did was a lot of fun.
The closest I've ever been to being sacked in my life.
For what you were saying.
For what we were all saying.
Yeah, so some highlights team-wise. In fact, I think this was the Final Four. It was the Binghamton Rumble Ponies, the Scottsdale Community College Fighting Artichokes, the KV Mechelin Crappers, and the Hartlepool United Monkey Hangers. And if you haven't listened to that, it's worth just hearing the story of the Monkey Hangers and how they came to be. But there was another team, Kyle. Do you remember the name of them? I think it was an Impumlanga. What was the mascot? Do you remember?
I think that's something you would want to say.
No, I think you can do it. Do it in your Gordo voice.
I don't remember what the name was.
It was...
I know it was something incredibly offensive.
Josh, do you remember?
I'm pretty sure they were the Dangerous Darky.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
From the Pumalanga Black Aces or
Pumalanga or something. Yeah.
And weren't they from South Africa?
Yes.
Which makes it even worse because of apartheid and everything.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing.
Do you know what the best part is? Is that they formed to make the Black Aces, the Mpumalanga Black Aces, and they're a real team that you can play as on Football Manager right now.
Yeah, I think they only kept that other name for like 2 seasons, I think, when we ended up looking it up, which was disappointing.
Yeah, I think so.
And the fact that we put it through one round was probably even worse.
Yeah, it was tough because producer Kyle put it together, and he put together a fantastic tournament. And he did that, and I know why he did that, and it is funny, and it's a good bit. And it felt disrespectful because, in all sincerity, it is a very funny team nickname. But I did not feel comfortable saying that over and over again to a podcast that I knew people that I worked with that listened to it. And it was just, and after saying it once, it was enough for me.
Well, watching us all cringe as we're trying to make the argument for it, and then quickly backing away after it went through one round.
Yeah, just dropping it as quickly as we could.
Yep.
Gave it the respect it deserved, and then just saw it off. just told it to fuck off. But before we wrap up the show, do y'all have anything else from last year that really sticks out?
I only have one more.
Okay.
But I feel like I've done a few. So, Kyle, if you've got more.
No, we kind of hit a bunch of the real highlights for me. I mean, obviously, like any of the wrestling heavy ones have always been fun when we looked at like cards and stuff like that.
Yes.
Those have always been really fun and done like predictions for that. And I mean, I know what's going to be on next year's. It's probably going to be what we do in a couple of weeks because I think that's going to be incredibly fun.
Yeah, we'll talk about that towards the end when I kind of talk about the format stuff.
Yes.
So my final one then were and I still don't really remember much about it at all. I couldn't tell you who it was about or any of that sort of stuff. But the enjoyment that you had from my dramatic readings of the victory parade.
Oh God, the Brett Hall thing.
Yeah, that was. I honestly totally forgot about that, and you totally botched the tone. But that's what made it better. like just because it was twice the speed. It was nice and clear. It had punctuation.
It was coherent. It wasn't said by a guy that was ass drunk at noon.
It truly was 2 very different speeches. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the experience. And I thought
we went blues. We already did it. We already did it.
You know what? That's a good podcast name.
It probably is.
And I'm gonna kind of segue this last note into the kind of the future of the show. If you guys don't have anything else,
I'm good. I'm done.
Okay,
I've got nothing.
So
I've had nothing.
One of the cool, it's been a year of nothing from Kyle. I think, so one of the things that the show has spawned was actually a college football show that Kyle and I do with our buddy Jeff, who we also happen to work with. And once we started doing that show, we were using the Trebuchet feed. It's now on its own feed, so feel free if you want, run pod option. But it's an important part of this equation because I really love college football, right? And I love doing that show. And that show specifically, I like to edit it, make it sound clear, make Kyle sound good, make Jeff sound good, make me sound good, and take my time because it's something we all really love. The same way that Josh, when he records his podcasts, is careful with what he says. He's calculated. He does his homework and everything else. That's the kind of show it is. And because that's a weekly show right now, it is a lot of work, right? Like, I mean, there's some prep time. There's some, and it's not work because we enjoy it, but it's also like, you don't want to just come in sounding like a dipshit or anything either.
I'm going to tell you right now, it was incredibly hard going in a couple weeks ago when I was coming off of a wedding where I honestly had no idea what happened in college football.
Right. Right. And the benefit of that show is that we can call on other people to sub in, but it's also easily done with 2 people, just like Trebuchet has been. Whenever Josh and I have done an episode, or just you and I have done an episode, Kyle, it's still been just as easy, like no issue. But I kind of had this crisis when it was happening, because I was like, cool, I'm putting all this effort into Run Pod Option, and I want to put that effort in for Trebuchet, but I kind of lost, I couldn't see the forest through the trees, because the whole bit about Trebuchet, and I think truly the reason we wanted to all do this anyways, was it was a time to bunk off and enjoy each other's company.
Yeah.
We all live in Charlotte. We're not particularly close to one another, and since we work together, that's great, but we get to kind of record in a room, just us. Maybe the lights are off, maybe pants are on, I don't know. And we
usually
enjoy
candles.
Yeah, definitely candles. But we
edit out the
shit.
Smooth R&B.
Yeah, it's piped in only for us. We have one earpod in just to make sure we can hear it. But we really enjoy it, and the benefit of us riffing is we get to hang out with one another. That's cool. But also we just kind of do what we want to do. Like whether it's just shooting the shit within an hour and going to 20 topics, going to 2 topics, whatever it might be. But we're making a concerted, I don't know the right word because I'm an idiot. We're making an effort moving forward to...
You nailed it. Concerted effort was right.
Is it concerted effort? Okay, cool.
Yes.
Yep.
So we're making a concerted effort to basically treat the show like we originally wanted. Laid back, relaxed. We each bring whatever we want to bring to the show, because there's not going to be a shortage of things to talk about. We've always got something to talk about. And then also featuring more guests kind of moving forward. The different characters we work with, the Bobbies of the world. We had Alan on just an episode ago that was a lot of fun. That all have different interests, and it can kind of drive a lot of cool different conversation, whether it be soccer, wrestling, football, conspiracies. I don't know. Maybe we know someone that likes Bitcoin. Maybe we could have him on about Bitcoin, Trey. But being able to kind of do whatever we want to do, and then the only time we're really preparing for stuff is when we have kind of a big idea that we want to do. And Kyle alluded to it earlier. In fact, just because I'm talking so much, Kyle, do you want to kind of talk about what that idea is that we're going to do in 2 weeks?
Sure. So basically, if anybody watches wrestling, we know that we're basically doing a giant reorg in wrestling right now, where they're going to have another draft. They're going to actually split up the brands in WWE. They've moved NXT up. This is all part of the kind of war that's going to be going on with AEW, which is kind of fun that this is something that's happening again. There's going to be a lot of wrestling to talk, it seems like. But what we're going to do is we're going to sit down. We've all drawn our brands. There's 3 brands. And we've drawn draft order. We're going to go snake. We're going to have our own draft. And then we're going to book a pay-per-view afterwards to basically get new champions. And see, and I think it's going to be incredibly fun.
Yeah, it's going to be.
Marty's gonna pick the hipster team, so Dana Brooke gonna get drafted first.
Dana Brooke.
I don't think. I probably will have the hipster team, but that's because I watched. I do watch. I have watched a lot more indie wrestling, I think, than you guys have. So there are guys that suck in WWE. They just
that you're going to push to the moon,
right? That I just loved. It's like drafting a shitty receiver.
Makes your distaste for AEW all the more confusing.
I think it's
you've
probably...
watched so much more indie wrestling. Is it because it was good when you were watching it because it wasn't so well known, and now they're bringing a lot of indie wrestlers mainstream? You don't like it anymore?
Gotcha. Almost like the. What was the name of that band that did Little Lion Man?
Oh, Mumford & Sons?
Like how Mumford & Sons was really big, and then when they got popular, everybody tried to drop them.
Yes.
No, I think maybe. Probably not. I think... So, like, Young Bucks, I've liked. And this is not to get too much into it, because we'll keep going. But I don't know. It's probably, and it's just as much WWE's fault. I'm looking through it with different glasses, obviously, and biased glasses. But what AEW's done has done a really big shift in there's been a really big shift in indie wrestling because of it. And unfortunately, that's not ruined. It's really taken down the quality of like PWG. And Pro Wrestling Guerrilla was prime stuff before, and they've always kind of restocked the shelves, but it's starting to get really thin because because the AEW kind of making everybody buy in more, it's taken a lot of indie dudes out. And that kind of bums me out. That's probably my like secondhand hatred for AEW.
All this to get to the fact that Marty's team is going to be the Aurelius Ben of wrestling shows.
It will be. It will be an Aurelius Ben. It's going to be the Juice Williams. It'll be the
who's the giant dude you used to always draft in Madden or try to sign in Madden that would be your fourth receiver?
Keenan. God, he was huge and he used to play for the Chargers. I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah. I can't remember his name. But so the format.
Kasim Osgood.
Kasim Osgood. That's who it was. He was so good, man. He was Osgood even.
So stupid.
So shows like the one that Kyle's explaining that's coming up, we're going to put, kind of homework or have a plan for it. But not all episodes are going to be like that. And I think that's what makes us and what we really enjoy. And on that note, the people that have listened and that continue to listen, we really appreciate you.
Sorry for the AAF.
Yeah, sorry about the AAF. If you're still here from that AAF, I would like to hear from you because we've taken an enormous shift from that AAF preview show, which we worked so hard on.
And whoever's downloading us in Germany, I want to say hi to you.
Yeah. Those in Germany, there's 2 or 3 in Ethiopia that are consistent. They might have canceled it after we brought up that Mpumalanga team, honestly. I think... I know it's going to be a fun show moving forward, so we still appreciate it if you do want to share or tell people that you think will also be interested. And we want to hear your feedback still at Sports Trebuchet. But we're gonna relax and enjoy the show as we're doing it, and not try to dive too heavy to be something we're not. Can I get your agreement on that, Kyle and Josh?
No.
Yep.
All right,
whatever
Kyle,
you say, mate.
Yeah.
Of course.
On that note, we appreciate it, guys. We're also still going to be keeping it on a bi-weekly show. It works for everybody. We've got busy schedules.
We have families.
And all hail Sports Trebuchet, yeah?
Ah, yes. The superior sports siege weapon.
Exactly. Say goodbye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, y'all.
Hi, my name's Joshua Tracy.
And I am Corwin Heller.
And we are the hosts of a statistics and sports podcast called Juicing the Numbers.
We cover the NFL, college football, MLB, and the NHL with anything that we like to talk about in between.
If you like sports and the numbers behind it, come check out our show, Juicing the Numbers, on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you find podcasts. Hit us up on Twitter at JuicingPod.